Sometimes it's hard to come up with projects that the boys at my house will enjoy, but they love this one, and so it was made with them in mind. I have a good friend whose husband makes these incredible wall signs out of recycled lumber, and they're very modern and very simple, and my husband and my boys both think they're really cool. Well, I'm not a carpenter, but I can make things out of fabric, so I decided to use that inspiration and create this modern wall hanging to hang up in my boys' bedroom. So I hope you guys like this. I'm calling it Modern Vibes, and it is just about as easy as it comes. It has nods to sewing together your binding strips or making a jelly roll race. It's all going to be very familiar to you, and it's really easy to make. So let me tell you how we're going to do it. You're going to need 2 junior jelly rolls. I used one in parchment and one in navy. And if you're not familiar, the junior jelly roll just means that you get half as many strips as a traditional jelly roll. There's 20 in here. So we get to kind of pick and choose the colors that we want and have half and half exactly. And so that's what I have here. You're also going to need 3 yards of backing for the wall hanging, but let's go ahead and dive in because this is really easy, and all we need to focus on is making these different angles that you see here. I want you to keep in mind that this can be a really kind of free play-as-you-go project. You don't have to follow the pattern, but we have written the pattern for you to conserve fabric and to make it as simple and straightforward as possible. So be sure to check that out. So to begin, I have cut my parchment strip, and we are going to make our first angle. So I have a full strip of the navy, and we're just going to do this like you would traditionally cross these over to make a binding strip when you're sewing these together so that they're on that angle. And so we're just going to lay these perpendicular to one another, and we're going to sew corner to corner. If it's helpful for you to put a pin in here or draw a line, you can totally do that. I am just going to overlap this just a little bit so that I can see my start and stop point, and we are going to put this under the machine. And I can line that first intersection up with my needle, and then I like to use my diagonal seam tape here, and I'm going to use the red line from that tape and put the other intersection right on that red line and continue it all the way through so that I know I'm sewing a great straight line. There we go. Now if you want to follow the pattern exactly, you're going to want to double check before you trim this off to make sure that your angle is going the correct way. And I'm happy with this one. I think you really don't need to worry. You can play with this however much you want. You can move these strips around in any order that your heart desires to make it your own. So please don't stress about which way it goes. There's so much freedom and fun in this. So I'm happy with that. I can roll it back, see it's what I want. So let's take it over to the cutting table now, and we can trim off our excess. We just want to leave a 1/4 inch seam allowance there. And I like to go ahead and trim off the little overhangs so that they're out of the way. Now we can press this back. So the measurement we're looking for now is 42.5. So I'm going to just lay my strip on my cutting mat, and I'm just going to eyeball. Since this doesn't go all the way to 42.5, I can split that in half, and I know that if I trim this down and put one end on 21.5 just to give me a little extra wiggle room and fold this over, then I can lay my ruler on here and just trim this off for now. I'm not going to worry about cutting these exactly at this point because I just want them to be close, and then I'm going to square this up when I sew all my strips together. So I have that one done, and now we're going to use the remainder of that navy strip to make the other angle. So remember on the first one we had it this way. We're actually going to flip this over now, and we're going to put the navy on top, and we're going to have to change the direction that we're sewing a little bit. And so before we sewed this direction, and now we're going to sew this direction. And I'm actually just going to make sure I have a little bit more overlap again so I can see where my start and stop points are. And then I'm going to place this again under my needle and line it up and sew corner to corner. There we go. And again, we can roll that back and check it. And what I really want to make sure is that when I set it next to my other strip, it's going the opposite. And you can see how it is. My angles are going in opposite directions. And so I know I've got it right. So now I can go ahead and cut off the excess, just like before. Leaving that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Trimming off the overhang. And then we can trim this to 42. And you can continue to use the leftover pieces for as long as you'd like. Maybe you want little strips of navy in yours. And so you can see how you'll continue to use those navy strips and just make sure that you don't have a lot of waste there. So I'm just going to trim that one. And then let's go ahead and take these and put them into the quilt. You can see I have most of the layout started over here on the design wall. And I just want to show you how you can move these up and down and play with it to make this your own. So let's go ahead and take these over there. Okay, so here are my 2 strip sets that we made. Remember, our opposite angles. And they are just going to set in like so. And you can see how on each of these strips I have left them a little long. They're not all exactly the same. And by doing that, when I put this in here, you can see that I can shift up and down and adjust how this is going to hit. And then all we're going to do, once we have this all laid out, is we're going to make sure that we're starting and ending with one of our angle strips. And in between every single one is a solid navy. And now all we do is we're just going to start sewing our strips together. So I'm going to go ahead and grab these first 2, and we can take this to the machine. So let's go ahead and do that now. I have heard many questions from people about how to manage strip quilts. When you're working with strips, you can sometimes get a bow or a wave. And my best advice to you is to just let your machine do the work. It's really important that you don't pull or tug, just gently guide your fabric. And so I'm just going to make sure it's lined up. And I am just not pulling at all, just guiding it to make sure I have that 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then readjust to make sure your fabric stays straight. There we go. Now, when you get to the pressing, again, you don't want to be pulling or tugging or pressing too hard. All of those little things that we can do to make sure that our fabric is going to stay as straight and as true as possible, I just like to roll it back and really just use the weight of the iron to press that in place and make sure that we don't have any creases. And you can see here how different my ends are. And that's because of the variance I had in the strip lengths. And I'm just not worried about that at all until the end. And then we can straighten all of these edges up. So we're just going to roll this back. And then if you wanted to go ahead and trim this off, you could. But I'm just not going to worry about that. And you can actually flip this over now and sew from the other side. And if you kind of go this side, then this side, it helps prevent that wave as well as, not tugging and pressing gently. And you can see this strip has stayed very, very straight, and as long as you continue to do that, it will stay straight all the way across the project. And so you can see how quickly this comes together. So there are 23 strips across, and this measures 46 wide by 42 tall. And I used this skewed squares quilting pattern on here, which I think is so fun to go along with this modern project. Now, I do want to mention, you might have noticed this cute pillow behind me. This is a bonus in the pattern, and it's made using your leftover strips. So you can whip this up quickly and have a pillow to go along with the wall hanging that you made. Before we say goodbye, I did want to show you this project in print. So I thought it would be fun for you to see this. This is some old fabric from my stash, but just know that this doesn't have to be done in solids, and it looks great either way. So I hope you enjoyed this project. I hope it gave you some modern vibes, and I hope you have a wonderful week. I'll see you next time.